If I had to relocate to Columbia, South Carolina again, these are the mistakes I'd make sure to avoid. And trust me, after living here for a decade and helping over 100 families relocate, I've seen it all. I mean, some of these lessons we learned the hard way. Others I've seen my clients go through. Or unfortunately, I've gotten that call from someone who made a move based on some online recommendations and now regretted it and wanted to sell. So before you pack your bags or hit schedule a showing, let's make sure you skip the stress and money wasters that so many others fall into. Mistake number 1, trusting relocation forums like they're the gospel. Look, I get it. When you're researching a move, those Facebook groups and Reddit threads can feel like a gold mine, right? Everyone's got an opinion. Lexington's the best. Stay away from Columbia. Blythewood is the next boomtown. You've heard it all, right? But here's the truth. Half the people commenting are either agents trying to sell you something or folks who've lived in this same spot for 15 years and haven't stepped foot on the other side of town since Blockbuster was open. It's not that they're lying, they just don't have the full picture. I mean, I had a client relocating from Florida who was set on finding something similar to what they had back in Fort Myers. They told me everyone online said not to live in Columbia zip codes. Lexington is where they had narrowed it down to. So we toured Lexington, and they quickly realized how spread out it was. It's beautiful homes, great schools, but not the walkable vibe and lifestyle they had really pictured. And I said, let's just take a quick drive through Shandon. No pressure, let's just look. And they hesitated because of the Columbia zip code, but they trusted me. And the moment we pulled in, they looked at each other and said, this feels like home. This is what we were looking for. So moral of the story, take online opinions with a grain of salt. The internet can help you start your search, but it can't tell you where you'll actually feel at home. You need that true boots on the ground advice from people who live it day to day. Because the only thing worse than bad advice online is buying a house in a neighborhood or an area you've never even seen. Mistake number 2, buying sight unseen without visiting. I see this all the time. Someone spots a house online, gorgeous pictures, great price, and they're ready to sign without her stepping foot inside. This became really popular during the pandemic as things were moving fast. But here's the thing, from what I found, Columbia isn't built like most cities. And pictures lie. I mean, angles hide things, you can't hear the traffic or feel what it's like sitting at that stoplight for 15 minutes every morning just to leave your neighborhood. Look, when my wife and I moved here, if we were in a position to buy, we probably would have made this same mistake too, because there was this beautiful house right near Lake Murray. I mean, we pictured it, evening walks across the dam and weekends right by the water. But the first day we got here, we drove out to see it in person and instantly realized it was not what we thought. Look, it was a tiny 2-street neighborhood, tucked off a busy road. There was loud traffic you could hear from the neighborhood. There were no sidewalks, and the only walkable spot was the dam itself, which meant dodging cars flying by at 50 miles an hour just to get to it. It wasn't that peaceful lakeside vibe we'd imagined when we saw it online. Look, if you can visit, even just for a weekend, drive the area, eat at local restaurants, get a little lost. You'll learn more in 2 days here than in 2 months scrolling listings online. Trust me. And if you're planning that visit, I mean, we got guides that can help you hit those right areas so you can actually see which area fits your lifestyle. Because the only thing worse than buying sight unseen is realizing you thought you were moving to save money and now you're actually paying more. Mistake 3, thinking affordable means cheap living. Yes, Columbia is more affordable than most big metros, but affordability doesn't mean cheap. I mean, I see it all the time. People move here, they run the math, and really only budget for the savings on mortgage and assume the rest is comparable or cheaper. They get settled in and realize utilities are higher in the summer, car property taxes that hit every year, and car insurance isn't as cheap as they thought. I mean, I had a buyer call from Florida. They were seriously considering a move here because their homeowner's insurance had gotten out of control and they knew it was cheaper here. But after watching my videos, they knew the right questions to ask. They said, what's up with those car property taxes? So we ran the numbers, and honestly, with their lineup of high-end vehicles, their yearly car taxes in South Carolina would have cost more than their new homeowner's insurance premiums over in Florida. They thanked me and said, you just saved us massive headaches as we were considering buying a house we saw online and didn't know about the taxes till your videos popped up when we were doing some research before committing to that new construction house. So before you buy, make sure you run the total numbers, not just the listing price. Mortgage, utilities, taxes, insurance, HOA fees. Look, it all adds up, because in Columbia, affordability isn't just about bargain hunting homes. And speaking of price tags, those new homes might not be the deal they look like once you dig into the details. Mistake number 4, jumping into new construction without representation. Look, new construction is exciting. That smell of fresh paint, shiny new appliances, and that clean slate. It's hard to not fall in love. Trust me, I've been there. We bought a brand new home ourselves, and I get the appeal. But here's what a lot of people forget. Those friendly sales agents in the model home, they work for the builder, not for you. Their job is to protect the builder's interests, not your wallet. I had a buyer call me recently. They watched all my videos, did their research, and felt confident. They went straight to the model home thinking they'd save a little money by skipping an agent. But a few weeks later, they called me. They were knee-deep in a contract, needing help. And unfortunately, at that point, my hands were tied. Once that paperwork is signed, legally, I can't step in and fix things. That's why I tell people all the time, reach out before you ever walk into a model home. Look, every builder has their quirks. They got different contracts and different ways of handling incentives or those upgrades. It's not just about who's good and who's bad. It's about knowing the processes so you don't make an expensive mistake or leave money on the table, honestly. Even as an agent myself, if I moved somewhere new and wanted to buy new construction, I'd still call a local agent first because they know the builders, the reps, and the behind the scenes stuff that you'll never see online. And look, at least locally, it's not gonna cost you more money to bring them. And speaking of the behind the scenes stuff, let's talk about one thing you can't find online: how long your commute really feels every day. Mistake number 5, not testing the commute. So one of the biggest surprises for people moving here is just how spread out Columbia really is, even though on a map it looks pretty condensed. That 15-minute commute Google Maps promises, yeah, try 30 once you hit I-20 or I-26 during rush hour, or truthfully, get stuck behind a slow car on a 2-lane road leaving your subdivision. I had 2 buyers recently who both got job offers with the new Scout Motors plant over in Blythewood. One was coming from Michigan, the other from Florida, 2 different perspectives. One was Iron Irmo and the other Lexington. And they found some houses online they loved, and Google Maps made it seem that the drive wasn't too bad. And I told both of them the same thing. Look, before you commit to anything, I challenge you, drive that route at 8 a.m. Sure enough, they both called me a few days later and said, Brandon, you were right. Both coming from bigger metros, they thought Columbia was much smaller and it would be an easy drive. But after driving it, they realized how old it would get real quick. And just to be honest, both ended up buying over in Blythewood instead. And they thanked me for saving them an hour of their life every day. So before you buy, test the route. Morning, midday, and evening. Grab a coffee, turn on a podcast, and get a feel for what that drive really feels like. Because no dream home feels dreamy when your commute steals 2 hours of your day. And speaking of what's outside the house, the next mistake is focusing so much on the home that you forget about everything around it. And a bonus mistake that I wanted to squeeze in here because we see it time and time again, and we've seen it a lot more recently. We get those phone calls on Thursday. Hey Brandon, we love your videos. We've been watching them. We're coming to town this week and I'm sending you a list. Pump the brakes. Here's the reality. As much as we would love to knock out every single one of those pop-up showings we get, it's just not the reality, right? We get people that reach out to us every single day. I'm out here doing the research for these, making these videos, doing consultations, out showing clients. And the reality is we're not one of those teams that have 10 agents sitting in an office twiddling their thumbs hoping that somebody calls us. We're out here busy and we run a tight schedule. We get people that call weeks in advance and some that call months in advance. And that's why we got to stick to that schedule. So that's why I say reach out in advance. And look, if you just found me and you're coming into town this weekend, just don't be surprised if the answer is, hey, we can't accommodate. Of course, we can get you a self-guided tour if it's your first exploration visit, so we can help you with that. But we can't always accommodate those last minute show, and it's just the reality when you run a tight schedule and a busy team like we do. So don't make that mistake. Reach out ahead of time so we can get you on the books. Mistake number 6, focusing on the house instead of the area. I tell every client this: finding the right neighborhood and area is often the most challenging part of the process, not the house. Look, I can find you a great home in any area of town, but it truly comes down to matching the area's vibe with your family and your lifestyle. It's not that one area is necessarily better than other, as many online try and convince you. I've had clients happily buy in all of the areas. However, each area appeals to different people. The grocery stores you shop at, the parks that you're gonna walk through and take your kids to, the roads that you drive every morning to work. It all matters. And look, when my wife and I first moved here, we made this exact mistake. That's right. So we spent our entire visit driving from apartment to apartment. We found one that checked every box on paper, right? Great price, updated inside, and even a community pool. Sound familiar, right? But once we moved in, we realized fast we didn't like anything around it. It was the wrong area, wrong vibe, and it just did not feel like home for us. We'd spent so much time focused on the apartment itself that we never stopped to check out the area around it. We assumed it was all the same, right? The apartment and the complex look nice, so the area must be nice too, right? Now, thankfully, it was just a short lease, not a house that we'd be stuck trying to sell. So take it from me, spend time exploring before you decide. It's not as easy as is Irmo better or Lexington. Is it Blythewood or Elgin? It's a matter of which one fits your lifestyle best. Drive around, talk to the neighbors, see what that neighborhood feels like on a Friday night versus a Tuesday afternoon. Because finding that right area isn't just about convenience. It's the make or break on whether or not you love the area you live. The right area literally changes everything for people. And again, we can help you narrow this down if you reach out. We know these areas like the back of our hands. And speaking of chasing the right fit, the next mistake is chasing perfection itself. Mistake number 7, chasing perfect. I've worked with so many people who've been researching their move for years. And some, just to be honest, are still stuck. They're looking for that perfect place. You know the wish list. No shoveling snow, no natural disasters, low taxes, minimal traffic, top schools, water access, walkable areas, new homes, and somehow still under budget. Look, I had a buyer from New York who sent me a spreadsheet of everything they had to have. And just being honest, about half of those boxes didn't even exist in our area. They told me they were okay with some compromise, and I warned them ahead of time, and they still came down. And sure enough, after a weekend of touring, they said, yeah, this just isn't it. They told me they'd already visited 4 other cities and were moving on to the next and asked me if I had any recommendations. Look, we stay connected on social media, and 2 years later, they still haven't moved, and they still post online asking where this hidden gem is hiding. Here's the truth, that utopia doesn't always exist. And if it does, somewhere out there, there's a steep price tag attached. Every state, every city, every neighborhood has its trade-offs. The real key is figuring out your true must-haves versus it would be nice to have. And sometimes it's facing the reality that with lower cost, many times comes with more trade-offs. But for many, those trade-offs are far worth it. And speaking of trade-offs, the next mistake hits home for anyone dreaming about buying land and building that dream house. Mistake number 8, falling for land without understanding rural living. I see this one all the time, especially with those buyers looking for space. They'll find a few acres outside the city. They think no HOA, no rules, perfect. But here's the catch, no rules means no rules. I had a buyer from Arizona who was done with those master plan communities. They wanted freedom, no HOA, no neighbors telling them what color to paint their house. So we found this charming little farmhouse not far outside of Lexington. I mean, it looked great online, quiet, peaceful, just what they wanted. We drove out there and reality hit. Next door, an older ranch home, but there were 7 cars parked right in the front yard. Half of them looked like they hadn't moved in years. 2 houses up, a single wide with a yard full of construction equipment. They looked at me like, what is this? I told them straight up, just like you don't want anyone telling you what to do with your land, neither do they. Look, you're not in suburbia anymore. This is the Wild West or Southeast of zoning, because no HOA sounds great until your neighbor builds a backyard scrapyard. And then there's a second surprise of land, not realizing how much it really costs to buy land and build that dream house. But I made an entire video about that if you want to learn more. Mistake number 9, expecting big city amenities in a mid-sized market. If you're coming from New York, parts of Florida, out west, or even in Austin, be ready. Columbia will feel different. Look, there's no Trader Joe's on every corner. Restaurants often close randomly during the week or earlier than what you're used to. Big concerts or luxury shopping, you might need to drive. Look, I had a buyer from California who asked, where's the nice neighborhood close to Trader Joe's and Costco? Oh, and my husband needs to be about a 30-minute drive from an international airport for his work. Look, we only have one Costco, and until recently, we only had one Trader Joe's, and it was on the opposite side of town from Costco. We don't have an international airport either, just the Columbia Metro Airport. No Apple stores, no IKEAs. Look, we're not a big city, but here's the flip side. A lot of you moved away from the big city because you were tired of it. Here, you'll find that slower pace, stronger sense of community, local shopping, and less chaos, just to be honest. And to put into perspective, the entire state of South Carolina house fewer people than just Los Angeles County that I moved here from alone. So the reality, there isn't enough demand for many of those spots that you ask for, no matter how much the locals beg for it on Facebook forums. Mistake number 10, rushing the process. Now, I have one more bonus after this that is critical that you don't want to miss. But look, I get it. Moving is emotional. You see a house online that checks all your boxes and suddenly it feels like it's the one. You don't want to miss out, so you rush. But I tell clients all the time, don't let the fear of missing out force a bad move. Stick with me. This is a big mistake I see. So first, I got a call from a homeowner recently who had done a little research online. Then one day, that perfect house popped up. Great price, good yard, not too far from town. They called that agent on the listing online, drove 12 hours down, saw it once, and made an offer that day. 3 months later, they called me, wanting to sell. They had watched my videos and now realized Blythewood was probably a better fit for them because they hated the current area, the commute, and that overall vibe of the area. Because unfortunately they just bought, they would have had to bring money to the table just to get out, and they just weren't in a position to do that. Now, on the other hand, I had another buyer reach out before they moved. They had also fallen in love with a house online in South Lexington, but I told them, let's wait until you're here, see it in person, especially after listening to what they were looking for. 2 weeks later, they flew in, house was still on the market, and we saw it, and they immediately said, nope, this is not the area we pictured. So they took an extra few days to explore, and we actually found them another home over in Irmo, and that's where they still live today and absolutely love it. And one more, this is a biggie, the one that got away. I had a couple visit town just to get a feel for the area, and if the right house came up, they said they could buy, and they found this home they absolutely loved. Great fit, great price, so we ended up checking it out. But life happened, and they ended up having to delay their move for about a year. So a year later, they came back out ready to buy. And no matter what we saw, nothing compared to that first house. Price had gone up, inventory had shifted, and that home haunted them through the whole search. It ruined their expectations for when the time was right for them. That's why I always tell people, you gotta flip the order here. Focus first on whether this area is right for you. Once that's clear, when the timing is right, that right home lines up, you'll know it. Trust me, I've been through this with over 100 people. Sometimes slowing down is actually the fastest way to find what truly fits versus trying to line up all your ducks in a row 2 years ahead of time, especially when markets and inventory shift fast. And look, as a bonus, one of the other biggest mistakes I see is people assuming all real estate markets are the same. And the reality is, across the country, there's a lot of variances. And even within our local market. Look, there's a lot of variances depending on the area you're looking at, price points, and so much more. And you may see a stale listing online, but a lot of times there's more to it than meets the eyes. And again, that's where we can help you understand what our market looks like, depending on what you're looking for. And look, I get it, mistakes happen. We made them, but most of them you can completely avoid just by slowing down, doing your homework, and getting connected with somebody locally that understands the move you're about to make, and before you make that big decision. Because the truth is, from what I found, Columbia isn't like elsewhere. And relocating isn't just about buying a house. It's about building that new life you dreamed about, finding that right pocket of town, and getting that feel for your day-to-day before you jump in. So again, if you're thinking about making the move, reach out before you start your search or click on a listing. And if you're still in the research phase, check out this playlist here. It'll walk you through the different suburbs around Columbia so you can see which one actually fits you best. Because again, that's the big part a lot of people skip. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode.